The auction square was quiet. Too quiet for a place known for shouting bids and clanging metal. Everyone stood far back from the last cage, their faces filled with fear, curiosity, and whispers inside that rusted cage. Crouched like a wild animal. Was the alien girl no one dared claim? She was barefoot, dirt smeared on her face. Her silver hair tangled like weeds in a storm. Her glowing eyes flickered with anger and warning. Even the guards who brought her avoided eye contact. One of them had a deep scratch down his arm, still bleeding slowly. "She's not tame," someone whispered. "She bites, she speaks and growls," said another. "Like she doesn't understand words." But those who looked carefully could see something else. She watched everything, remembered everything, and waited. The auctioneer. A fat Zarnax trader with 6 gold teeth banged his staff and shouted, "Last prize of the night." A rare specimen. Half feral, half intelligent. Strong, fast, and tamed. He paused as no one stepped forward. Opening bid, 100 credits. No movement, 50, 10, 1. Still silence, even the lowest bidder, the junk seller from the far rim, shook his head and stepped back. The girl inside the cage hissed suddenly, sharp and loud. A small child in the crowd screamed and clutched. Their parent, the crowd backed up even more. The auctioneer looked nervous now. Wiping sweat from his blue forehead, "She's unpredictable, yes, but who knows what secrets lie in wild blood," he said, trying to recover. "Could be psychic, could be beast," he muttered under his breath. Then, just as the auctioneer was about to give up and ordered the guards to take her away, a voice rose from the back, calm and deep. "I'll take her," the voice said. The crowd turned as one, jaws dropping. A human man stepped forward, tall and dusty, dressed in old survival gear, a long coat over his shoulders. He looked straight at the cage, not with fear, but with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or a quiet challenge. The auctioneer blinked, then forced a grin. "You, accepted, human. 1 credit. You'll need a waiver, though she's dangerous." The man didn't answer. Just walked slowly up to the cage. The alien girl rose to her feet like a wild cat, eyes locked on him, muscles tense, ready to spring. The guards reached for their weapons, but the man raised one hand, calm. Then, without a word, he knelt in front of her cage and looked directly into her glowing eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. "I'm here to take you out of this place." For a moment, no one breathed. The girl's lips parted, just slightly. She didn't growl, didn't strike. She just stared, as if she was trying to decide something, and then she stepped back from the cage bars, silent like a shadow, and the human reached forward, unlocked the cage with a key handed by a guard, and opened the door. No sudden attack came, no violence. She stepped out slowly, eyes still on him, unsure, untrusting but free. The crowd whispered again, this time with a different tone. Some thought the human was mad. Some thought he must be secretly powerful. Others just watched in silence, sensing that something very strange had just begun, and the alien girl, wild and feared, now walked behind a human who never raised his voice, never showed fear. She followed him into the shadows beyond the market square, where stars blinked down through the thin clouds. No one dared stop them, not anymore, because from that moment, the whispers changed. Now they said, "The wild one walks with a human," and none knew what would come next. The walk through the dust, the human walked through the quiet streets with slow, steady steps. Beside him, the alien girl walked barefoot, her feet making no sound on the cracked stone. The crowd behind them slowly disappeared, fading into the lights and voices of the market. Now, it was just the two of them. She didn't speak, she didn't run, but she kept looking at him from the corner of her glowing eyes. Her name was not known. She had no collar, no tag. and no past anyone could trace. The only thing she wore was a torn wrap across her chest and shoulders. Covered in dirt and dust, her body was thin but strong, marked with old scars that told stories no one dared ask about. The human, named Cole, stopped near a small ridge where his old rover waited. It was scratched and dented, covered in sand and rust, but still running. He opened the side hatch and stood aside. The alien girl looked at the vehicle with suspicion. Then at him. Then, without warning, she climbed in and curled into a corner. Like a tired animal used to cages, Cole sighed softly and entered after her. He didn't chain her, didn't lock her in. He just tossed a blanket beside her and powered up the engine. The rover rumbled to life, lights flickering, wheels turning slowly as it rolled out toward the outer desert. Miles passed in silence. Outside, wind howled over red sand and broken rocks. Inside, she watched him as he drove, his hands steady, eyes calm. He didn't ask questions. He didn't speak at all, but he did offer her a canteen of water. She stared at it, then took it, drank slowly, and placed it beside her. She was watching. Always watching, her wild instincts never slept. But something in her had softened since the cage opened. She wasn't sure what it was. Maybe it was the way the human never forced her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not like a monster. Not like a thing, but like a person. As night fell, Cole stopped the rover near a hidden canyon where he kept a small outpost. It was an old bunker, half buried in rock, built during one of the border wars long ago. He opened the heavy door and stepped inside. Lights flickered on, warm and low, showing a simple space with a bed, a table, a stove, and supplies stacked in corners. The alien girl didn't follow right away. She stood at the door, sniffing the air, listening, waiting. Then, slowly, she entered. He motioned to a spot on the floor near the heat lamp. She sat there, legs pulled to her chest, eyes never leaving him. Cole heated some food, basic ration stew, nothing fancy. He placed a bowl in front of her and stepped back. Again, she hesitated. Then she reached out and began to eat. Fast but careful. She didn't say thank you. But Cole didn't expect her to. He just watched quietly, then ate his own meal in silence. Afterward, he placed another blanket near her and stretched out on his bed. He didn't tell her what to do. She could sleep or run. She could stay or vanish into the desert night, but she didn't run. She stayed. Lying down on the floor, facing the door, guarding it as if by habit, Cole closed his eyes. And for the first time in weeks, the girl closed hers too. The next morning, the sun rose bright and sharp over the dunes. Cole stepped outside to check his gear. When he returned, he found the girl exploring the small bunker, touching things carefully, never breaking anything. He watched her press a finger against the mirror. Surprised by her reflection, she seemed younger now, more curious than dangerous. But something told him the danger wasn't gone, just hidden deeper. She was still wild, still unsure, but now she wasn't alone. And as she turned to look at him, something passed between them. Not words, not trust yet, but the beginning of something new. The test in the dust the next day began with wind. Dust blew across the canyon, sharp and dry, slicing through the air like whispers of an old warning. Cole stood outside the bunker, adjusting a solar panel while the alien girl watched from the doorway. She hadn't spoken, not even once, but her eyes said more than words ever could. Cole didn't push her. He never asked her name, never told her his plans. He just let her be. She followed him everywhere, now close enough to see, far enough to run, like a shadow that didn't trust the sun. That morning, Cole prepared for a salvage run. He strapped on his tool belt, checked his pulse pistol, and tossed a worn pack over his shoulder. "You coming?" he asked, not expecting an answer, but the girl stepped forward without hesitation. She didn't speak, just nodded once, like a soldier ready for war. They walked for hours through sand and silence. Cole led them toward the ruins of an old crash site, an abandoned trader ship buried under dunes and vines when they reached it. The sun was high and harsh. Cole wiped sweat from his brow, then turned to her. "Stay close," he said. "Some scavvers hide in these wrecks." The alien girl didn't blink. She stepped beside him like a partner, her senses sharp and alert. They entered the shadowed hall. Broken and rusted, inside, wires hung like dead snakes, metal beams bent into strange shapes. Every step echoed, every sound felt like a warning. Suddenly, from the darkness, a low growl rumbled. Cole raised his pistol. But before he could react, the girl leaped forward. She moved fast, too fast for a normal being. Her hands grabbed a metal rod, and with a wild snarl, she slammed it into something just ahead. A scaver, half human, half machine, dropped from the ceiling with a scream. More followed, 3, maybe 4, charging from the back rooms with makeshift weapons. Cole fired twice, stunning one of them. But it was the girl who moved like fury itself. She fought with teeth and fists, dodging and striking like she'd done it all her life. She didn't cry out, didn't hesitate, and soon the scavvers fled, dragging their wounded away into the dark. Breathing hard, the girl turned to Cole, her hands shaking slightly. He looked at her not with fear, but with quiet respect. "You're trained," he said softly. "You've done this before." She didn't reply, but something in her gaze shifted, like she had heard something in his voice that no one else had ever said to her, that she wasn't a beast, that she was capable. They searched the wreck, collected parts, found a few working power cells and some canned food. As they walked back to the canyon, the wind started to pick up. A sandstorm was coming. Cole looked at the horizon, then at her. "We need to move," he said. "This time." She reached for his hand, not to hold it but to help pull him up a slope. A silent gesture. Simple, but powerful, and Cole didn't say a word about it. He just followed her lead. By the time they returned to the bunker, night had fallen. The storm had begun howling outside, but the walls held firm inside. The heat lamp glowed softly, and Cole began preparing food. He glanced at her as she sat near the wall, brushing dust off her skin. "What were you before?" he asked, not expecting an answer. To his surprise, she looked up. Then she pointed to herself, then drew a line across her chest with 2 fingers. "Soldier?" he guessed. She paused, then nodded once. Slowly, he smiled just a little. "Yeah," he said. "I figured." He handed her a bowl of stew. She took it and ate in silence. But this time she didn't sit on the floor. She sat beside him, close enough to share the warmth. And that night, as the storm raged outside, the silence between them was no longer empty. It was peaceful. Something had changed. She had fought. For him, he had trusted her, and now they were no longer strangers, not quite. Still not friends, not yet, but not strangers anymore. The wild girl who had once snarled at crowds and growled at cages had sat beside a human and defended him like a comrade. And Cole, who never believed in fate, now wondered if he was meant to find her all along. Because sometimes the most powerful bonds don't come from words. They come from survival, from trust, from silence shared between 2 broken souls trying to live again. The name she never spoke. The storm lasted 2 days. Dust slammed against the bunker walls like waves in a red ocean. Inside, it was quiet, warm, and strange. Cole fixed old equipment and organized supplies. The alien girl watched him from the corner of the room, sitting cross-legged, still alert but calmer now. She hadn't tried to run. Not once. She hadn't growled or hissed. She just stayed. Cole didn't ask why, but something told him she wasn't used to staying anywhere. He could see it in the way she flinched when the heater clicked on, or how she glanced at the door every few minutes, like her body refused to believe. It was safe. That night, Cole sat at the small table. Sketching something on a scrap of metal, the girl leaned closer. Curious, he showed her the drawing. It was a flower, simple, with petals shaped like the sunshells found near the river planets. "Do you have a name?" he asked softly. She stared at him, then looked away. Cole didn't push. Instead, he picked up a flat stone, carved a single line into it with his knife. "I'll call you Ray," he said. "Like the sunlight that breaks through storm clouds." The girl blinked slowly. Then she pointed at herself and whispered, "Ray." It was the first time she had spoken. Her voice was rough, dry like sand, but real. Cole looked at her in surprise. He smiled, not wide, just enough, and nodded. "Yeah," he said, "that suits you." From that moment, something shifted. She was still silent most of the time, but now she watched with softer eyes. She ate beside him, not just near him. She touched things gently instead of gripping them like weapons one morning. Ray followed Cole to the canyon ridge where he kept a broken transmitter. He was trying to fix it, hoping to catch some signal from passing traders or stations. But Ray crouched nearby, staring at the horizon. She suddenly tensed. "Something's coming," she said quietly. Cole froze. He couldn't see anything yet. But Ray's body was alert, her ears twitching slightly, her hand reaching for the metal rod she always kept close. Minutes later, Cole saw them, 3 bikes. Cutting through the sandstorm, lights blinking red. Raiders, they weren't here to talk. They never were. Cole moved fast, grabbed his weapon, and nodded at Ray. "You ready?" he asked. She gave a single sharp nod, her body already moving. They took cover behind the rocks near the edge. The raiders didn't expect resistance. That was their mistake. When they arrived, laughing and shouting, Cole fired the first shot. One of them dropped from his bike with a scream. The others scattered, surprised by the ambush. Then Ray struck. She moved like wind in the canyon, fast and silent. Her rod cracked against a helmet, then spun and hit another raider in the knee. She didn't hesitate. She didn't hold back. Within minutes, the raiders were gone dead, wounded or running. Cole stood, breathing hard. He looked at Ray, who stood over a fallen enemy, eyes burning with something cold. Then, slowly, she dropped the rod and looked at him. "You didn't run," he said. She shook her head. "They would have followed." She said, "They always follow." Cole walked to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. "You're not alone anymore," he said. Her body trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper. A memory maybe, or pain she didn't know how to show that night. They sat by the small fire in the bunker. Ray stared into the flames, her voice low. "I wasn't always wild," she said. "They made me that way." Cole didn't ask who they were. He didn't have to. He just waited. "They took me young," she continued. "Training, experiments, pain. Then they threw me out." She paused. "I wasn't useful anymore." Cole closed his eyes. Not out of anger but sadness. He'd heard stories like that before, but never this close. Never from someone who had lived it. "You're more than useful," he said. "You're strong, smart, and alive." She looked at him, eyes softening. Then, for the first time, she smiled. Just a little. It wasn't a happy smile. It was tired, broken, and real. And Cole knew he wasn't saving her. They were saving each other. The signal in the dark days passed after the raider attack. The desert grew hotter, the winds louder, but inside the bunker, something new was growing. Ray no longer sat apart from Cole. She helped clean the old equipment, organize supplies, and sometimes even made strange little noises, half laughs, half sighs, when Cole said something odd. She didn't speak much, but her silence wasn't cold anymore. It felt like quiet comfort. One night, while checking the transmitter, Cole noticed a faint light blinking. He leaned in, adjusted the wires, and listened. A crackling voice came through. Broken but real. Emergency. Transport shuttle down. Survivors near Sector 4. Repeat. We need help. Ray came closer, her eyes narrowing. Cole looked at her. Could be a trap, he said. Or maybe they're just lost and scared. She stared at the signal for a long moment, then nodded. People don't send that call unless they're desperate, she said. The next morning, they packed quickly water, food, weapons, and medical gear. They loaded the rover and left before the sun rose high. Sector 4 was across the jagged flats, a place full of old wrecks and sinkholes. Not many returned from there. As they traveled, Ray stayed quiet. But her eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. Cole could feel her tension. Not fear, just readiness. She was always prepared now, prepared to protect. By midday, they reached the edge of Sector 4. Smoke rose in the distance. They drove closer and saw the broken shuttle lying half-buried in cracked stone. Its side was torn open, fire-blackened, and leaking gas. Cole stopped the rover and raised his binoculars. "Icy movement," he whispered. Ray already had her rod in hand. Eyes locked on the wreck. They approached carefully, using rocks for cover, near the shuttle. 3 figures sat in the shade, 2 adults and a child. They looked weak, sunburnt, and frightened. Cole raised a hand in greeting. "We're here to help," he called out. But before the strangers could reply, a sharp sound echoed across the flats, a sniper shot. The dirt exploded near Cole's boot. He dropped low, pulling Ray down with him. "Ambush," she growled, her voice low and sharp from the ridges. 5 more raiders appeared, weapons raised, faces covered in desert. "Rags bait," Cole muttered. They used those survivors as bait, but Ray wasn't waiting. She was already moving fast and low. She charged toward the left flank, using the rocks for cover. Cole fired his blaster, forcing the raiders back, giving Ray time to get close. She moved like a shadow, sliding between rocks. Then she struck her rod, smashing into one raider's jaw with a loud crack. Another turned to shoot her, but she rolled and struck his leg, dropping him before he could scream. Meanwhile, Cole held his ground, blasting at the ridge. One of the raiders tried to rush him, but caught a stun round to the chest. The others started to fall back, confused and disorganized. Ray didn't stop. She moved from one to the next, her strikes fast and brutal. They called her wild, but this wasn't wildness. This was skill. This was training. This was survival made into art. In less than 5 minutes, the raiders were gone. Some lay unconscious. Some crawled away into the rocks. Cole ran to the survivors, checking them quickly. "Are you hurt?" Kay asked. The older man shook his head. "No, just tired. Hungry. We crashed last night. We thought no one would come." Ray stood beside them now, silent and watching. The child looked up at her with wide, scared eyes. "You're not one of the raiders?" the little one asked. Ray paused, then knelt slowly. "No," she said softly. "I used to be alone, too, that evening." They all returned to the bunker. Cole shared food and water, and Ray showed the child how to make a fire using stones. Her hands were gentle, her voice quiet. She smiled awkwardly, but she did, later that night. After the survivors had gone to sleep in the extra room, Cole sat near the entrance with Ray. Beside him, the stars blinked above like tiny memories in the sky. "You didn't have to fight for them," Cole said, "but you did." Ray looked up. "I remember what it was like. Waiting for someone to care," she whispered. He didn't speak, he just nodded. And in that moment, Cole realized something. Ray wasn't just recovering, she was changing, becoming more than what the world tried to make her, and maybe, just maybe, she had started to believe in something again. The fire within her, the survivor, stayed for 2 more days. Ray didn't speak much, but she stayed near the child. She showed her how to boil water, how to grind dried roots, how to sharpen a stick with stone. The child followed her like a shadow, wide-eyed and smiling, and every time she laughed, something inside Ray warmed, like a soft fire deep in the ashes. Cole watched from a distance. He didn't interrupt. He knew what it meant for Ray to finally let someone be close without fear. But peace never lasted long on this planet. On the third day, smoke appeared on the horizon. Thick, dark, fast-moving, not fire ships. Cole climbed the ridge and lifted his scope. 3 black transports, moving low, unmarked, too large for raiders, too quiet for traders. He lowered the scope slowly, his face serious. "It's them," Ray said from behind him, her voice flat. Cole turned to her. "Who?" She didn't blink. "The ones who made me," she said. "They found me again." Cole's stomach turned cold. She didn't explain more. She didn't need to. He ran back to the bunker. "Pack the survivors into the rover. You need to get to the South Station," he told the man. "Take the long path through the canyons. Avoid the skies." "What about you?" the man asked. Cole looked back at Ray, who stood in the doorway gripping her rod. "We'll hold them off," he said. "We're not running anymore." The man nodded and drove off with the child, waving goodbye. Ray didn't wave back. She just turned to Cole. "I don't know how many they'll send," she said. "I don't care." Cole answered, "If they came for you, they'll meet both of us." They prepared the bunker quickly. Cole wired the perimeter with charge traps, stacked crates for cover, and loaded his rifle. Ray pulled her hair back and tied it with a strip of cloth from the blanket the child had slept in. She wore it like armor, like memory. When the ships arrived, they didn't land with noise. They hovered above the canyon, silent as death. Ropes dropped down, and dark figures in silver armor slid into the dust. 10 of them, maybe more. One stepped forward, taller than the others, his voice loud and cold. "Subject R-73. He called, return to control, or face deactivation." Ray stood in the open, her rod in one hand. "I'm not your subject anymore." She shouted, "You are property," the voice replied. "You are a weapon." Cole stepped beside her, rifle raised. "She's not a weapon," he said. "She's free." The soldiers raised their weapons. So did Cole, but Ray moved first. She charged like a storm breaking across stone. Fast, fierce, fearless. The first 2 soldiers fell before they could aim. Cole fired from the side, blasting armor and knocking one back. Ray ducked, twisted, struck again. She didn't fight like a girl. She fought like a memory of war. Like every scream she had swallowed, every cage she had broken. This was not just survival. This was release. The leader tried to grab her. She grabbed his arm and pulled him down with a shout. "No more control," she growled, and slammed her rod into his helmet. Shattering it like glass, Cole covered her from behind. His shots precise, his face set. They fought as one, 2 lives that had been broken now, fighting together to stay whole. When the last soldier fell, silence returned, the dust settled. Blood marked the stones, and Ray stood in the center, chest rising, eyes blazing with something more than anger, something like life. Cole walked to her, touched her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. She turned slowly, nodded once, then collapsed into his arms. Not from injury, but from everything she had held inside. He held her, saying nothing. There were no words strong enough for what she had just done. Later, as they buried the bodies far from the bunker, Ray whispered, "They'll come again." Cole looked at her. "Then we'll be ready again," he said. She stared at him, then asked something she had never dared to before. "Why did you choose me?" Cole didn't speak right away. He looked up at the stars and said, "Because everyone else saw a wild thing, I saw someone who needed a chance." Ray closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered, I was never wild, Cole. They just treated me like I was, and now, for the first time, she believed she wasn't alone. The one who chose her weeks past since the battle. The wreckage of the soldier's ship still rusted out in the canyon, half buried in the sand, but inside the bunker there was life. Not just survival, real life. Cole repaired the transmitter. Again, this time using the tech from the enemy gear. Ray helped, her hands steady. Her eyes focused. She wasn't just learning, she was building. Each day, she looked stronger. Not in body, but in spirit. The fear in her steps was gone. Now, when she moved, it was with purpose. They built new shelves, made a second bed, planted small seed trays in old crates. Ray even painted the wall with rough-shaped stars, moons, small suns, and the child's name in her own alien symbols. One night, the transmitter crackled again. But this time, it wasn't a call for help. It was a response, a trade ship passing. Near orbit had heard Cole's signal. They were stopping for supplies and news. Cole looked at Ray. "We'll have visitors," he said. She nodded, then added softly, "Let's welcome them," when the ship arrived. It was quiet and peaceful. 3 traders stepped out, one human, one four-armed Threnok, and a tiny robotic assistant. They brought tools, seeds, and sweets wrapped in metal foil. They also brought stories. Stories of rebellion spreading in the outer systems. Stories of people like Ray escapes experiments. Forgotten soldiers starting to rise. The human trader stared at Ray for a long time. "You're one of them, aren't you?" he asked. Ray's jaw tightened. "Yes," she said, but there was no shame in her voice. The trader nodded slowly. "Then you're not alone anymore," he said. He handed her a comlink with encrypted channels for when you're ready, after. The traders left. Cole and Ray stood watching the ship vanish into the stars. He looked at her. "You thinking about joining them?" he asked. She was quiet, then said, "I don't want to run anymore. I want to live." Cole nodded. "This is your home too, Ray. You don't need to go anywhere unless your heart tells you to." Ray turned to him. "My heart says to stay," she whispered. And for the first time, she reached out her fingers, brushed against his hand, and stayed there. That night, they sat side by side under the stars. No guns, no fear, no noise, just the wind and the soft hum of the heater behind them. "I used to think I was broken," Ray said, her voice quiet, "that I'd never belong anywhere." Cole didn't interrupt. "But now?" She paused, breathing slowly. "You claimed me when no one else dared. You didn't tame me," she added. "You just gave me space to remember who I was." Cole turned to her. "You were never a beast, Ray," he said. "You were a girl who fought to survive in a world that forgot what kindness was." She smiled. Not a sad one this time. It was full, bright, even playful. Then she asked, "Do you regret it? Raising your hand for me that day?" He looked her in the eye. "No," he said. "I only regret that I didn't find you sooner." A silence followed, soft and strong. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder. The wild girl who once crouched in a cage, snarling at the world, now sat beside the man who never flinched when she did. They didn't need to speak more. The stars above already told their story. In a galaxy full of power, cruelty, and noise, one quiet choice changed everything. Not because he saved her, not because she fought for him, but because they saw each other clearly, truly, and fully. And sometimes, that's all it takes to heal something the universe tried to break. A raised hand, a quiet voice, and a heart strong enough to listen. The end.